Emma Turner had always believed she understood her life. She lived in a small but warm Seattle apartment with Daniel Hayes, the man who made her morning coffee, the man who kissed her on the forehead before work, the man she once believed she would never hurt. But things inside her heart had become confusing in recent months' quiet doubts. Small worries, moments where she wondered if she was enough, if she was interesting enough, if she was still the woman Daniel had fallen in love with. These thoughts weren't loud, but they lived under her skin, growing slowly until they felt like shadows she could not escape. She never meant for those doubts to lead her into a mistake. But they did one evening months earlier, during a work trip when everything inside her was tangled. It was a single moment that she regretted the second it happened, a moment she tried to bury deep inside herself. She told herself that people make mistakes, that she could move forward, that Daniel never needed to know. But no matter how hard she tried to forget it, the memory sat in her heart like a stone now. As she stood in the doorway of their apartment watching Daniel walk in from the cold rain, she felt that stone grow heavier. Daniel smiled at her the way he always did, warm, gentle, full of trust. That smile used to comfort her, but today it only made her chest tighten. She felt like she was letting him love a version of her that no longer felt honest. Her guilt followed her everywhere, while cooking dinner, while folding clothes, even when she tried to sleep beside him. Every time Daniel looked at her with kindness, she felt a twist of pain. She wanted to tell him the truth, but she also feared what that truth would destroy. Daniel had never given her a reason to doubt him or their relationship, which only made her mistake feel even worse. Daniel hung his jacket and walked over to her. "You seem far away lately," he said gently. His voice carried worry, not anger. "Did I do something wrong?" The question cut through her. She wanted to tell him no, that he did nothing wrong, that the problem was her own fear and confusion. But the words stayed stuck in her throat. Her silence made Daniel's worry deepen. He sat beside her on the couch, waiting for her to speak, giving her space the way he always did. His patience made her want to cry. She had imagined this moment for weeks, rehearsing different ways to confess. But now that he was right in front of her, everything inside her froze. Emma took a slow breath, trying to calm her racing heart. She knew she couldn't hide forever. The truth was coming, whether she was ready or not. She opened her mouth to speak, but just then her phone buzzed on the table. The sound sliced through the quiet room. Emma looked down and felt her stomach drop. The message was from the person she hoped never to hear from again. The name alone made her heart feel like it stopped for a second. She hadn't talked to him in months. She had blocked everything. She had tried to erase that night completely. But somehow, he had found a way back into her world at the worst possible moment. Daniel noticed her reaction immediately. "Who is it?" he asked gently, not suspicious, just concerned. Emma quickly locked her phone, her hands shaking. She didn't want Daniel to see the message, not before she told him the truth herself. "It's nothing," she said too quickly, and Daniel's face showed a flicker of confusion. Emma knew she could not hide behind excuses anymore. Her fear, her guilt, her mistake, they were all pushing their way to the surface. She felt her throat tighten as she whispered, "Daniel, I need to tell you something." Her voice trembled and she looked at him with eyes full of worry. Daniel leaned closer, giving her his full attention. "I'm listening," he said softly. But Emma couldn't speak. Every word felt too heavy. Every breath felt too sharp. And the message still burned in her pocket like a warning. The moment she finally found the courage to confess, the truth was already racing toward them from another direction. Emma's phone buzzed again. This time, she couldn't ignore it. The screen lit up with a message that made her chest tighten. "We need to talk. It's important." Her heart sank instantly. That one night, that single mistake she had tried to erase had found its way back into her life. Months of careful avoidance and silent regret felt meaningless. She had hoped the past would stay buried, but the message reminded her it never truly leaves. She stared at the phone, trembling, unsure what to do. Daniel noticed immediately. His brow furrowed as he reached out, touching her arm gently. "Emma, what's going on?" he asked. His voice was calm, patient, full of the kind of love that made her feel guilty for what she had done. Emma shook her head, trying to find the right words. I made a mistake, she whispered. Daniel froze, waiting for her to continue. The truth hovered between them like a fragile glass ornament ready to shatter. Months ago, she added quickly, her voice breaking. I hurt you. I was confused and lonely. I didn't mean for anything to happen, but it did. The words spilled out before she could stop them. The guilt she had carried alone for months now had a voice. And Daniel was hearing it first. He didn't speak immediately. He just stood there staring at the floor as if trying to understand how a few sentences could change everything. The silence felt heavier than any argument, heavier than any fight they had ever had. Emma's chest ached. She wanted to explain, to tell him that it wasn't about love, that it was about fear, about her own insecurities, about her struggle to feel she was enough. But she didn't know if words could fix this, if anything could. Why didn't you tell me? Daniel finally asked, his voice quiet but firm, carrying a weight that made Emma's stomach twist. She swallowed, trying to hold back tears. Because I was scared, she admitted. Scared to lose you? Scared of what the truth would do to us. She could feel the honesty trembling in her voice. She was terrified. But the fear of losing him was even stronger than the fear of admitting her mistake. Daniel turned toward her, eyes searching hers. The hurt was there, clear and sharp, but beneath it, a layer of love and longing persisted. I thought we were stronger than this, he said softly. Emma's heart sank further. She wanted to tell him that she still loved him, that her mistake didn't change the depth of her feelings. But the words seemed impossible to say. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. I do love you, she whispered finally, her voice almost lost. I love you more than anything. This was a moment of weakness. It meant nothing. I was curious, confused, and I made a terrible choice. I never wanted to hurt you. Her hands shook as she spoke. Daniel's expression softened slightly, but the pain didn't disappear. The trust they had built over years had been shaken, and even love couldn't fix that overnight. Emma wanted to reach for him, to hold his hand and promise everything would be okay. But she didn't. She knew it would take time. Daniel needed space to process, to feel the betrayal, to weigh the love against the hurt. She sat quietly beside him, the tension between them thick. The message on her phone still burned like a warning, a reminder that the past was not yet done with them. Then Daniel's phone buzzed, cutting through the tension. He picked it up, surprised to see an unknown number calling. Emma's heart jumped. The timing was uncanny. The past seemed determined to confront them both at once. She knew they could not escape it. The mistake, the guilt, the curiosity, it was all surfacing now, demanding attention. Daniel listened to the voice on the other end, his face unreadable. Emma watched him, anxiety twisting her stomach. Every word felt like a test, every silence a judgment. The man on the other line claimed it was over, that nothing had meant anything, that he wanted no part in their lives anymore. It was a relief, but it didn't erase the hurt, the questions, or the fear that lingered between Emma and Daniel. Emma hid her tears, trying to stay strong. I told him to leave me alone, she whispered. I only want you. I only ever wanted you. Her words were desperate, raw, and real. Daniel didn't respond immediately. He just stared, trying to process the tangled emotions in front of him. Betrayal, love, fear, longing. Everything was happening at once, fast, intense, unrelenting. Finally, he turned to her, voice barely audible. If we're going to survive this, I need to know why it happened. The real reason? His words were firm, but not cruel. Emma's chest tightened. She had been waiting for this moment, dreading it, needing it. She knew she owed him the truth, the full, honest truth, no matter how painful it would be. The storm between them was far from over, but the first step had been taken. The past had arrived, the guilt had spoken, and the path toward truth, messy, emotional, and uncertain, was just beginning. Daniel stared at the phone in his hand, his mind racing. The call had come from a man Emma had tried to erase from her life months ago. The same man connected to the mistake that haunted their relationship. Daniel's heart thudded, not from anger but from confusion. He had spent months thinking he understood the problem, thinking he knew the depth of Emma's guilt, but hearing the voice of the past brought everything into sharp focus. Emma sat beside him, her hands trembling in her lap, her eyes red and shiny from tears she hadn't wanted him to see. She didn't speak at first, afraid her voice would break, afraid her words would make everything worse. The man on the phone repeated what he had written in the text. It had been a mistake. Nothing had meant anything, and he had no desire to interfere in their lives again. Daniel listened silently, letting each word sink in. Even though the message was meant to reassure, it also reminded him of the reality. Emma had been involved in something that had nothing to do with him, but still hurt him deeply. The thought twisted in his chest. He looked at Emma, trying to see the person he loved through the lens of betrayal, longing, and fear. She met his gaze, her honesty shining through the shame she carried. "I told him to leave me alone," Emma whispered, her voice soft but urgent. "I don't want him here. I don't want anything from the past. I only want you, Daniel. I've always wanted you." Her words were simple, but they carried the weight of months of guilt and regret. Daniel's chest tightened, his mind full of conflicting emotions. On one hand, he still loved her, still remembered the quiet mornings, the laughter, the comfort they had built over the years. On the other hand, the betrayal had cut a deep line in their shared story, a scar that wouldn't disappear overnight. He turned to her, his voice low but firm. "Did you ever care for him?" Emma shook her head quickly, her tears spilling down her cheeks. "No, not even for a moment. I was lost, confused, and I made a terrible mistake. Nothing I felt for him could ever compare to what I feel for you." The honesty in her words struck Daniel like a sudden gust of wind. He wanted to believe her, to trust the woman he loved with every part of his heart. But the pain of the betrayal still lingered, sharp and raw. They sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of unspoken thoughts hanging between them. Daniel's mind replayed memories of their life together, the moments of joy, the late-night talks, the quiet comfort of shared routines. He remembered her laugh, her smile, the way she always knew how to calm him down after a long day. But he also remembered the shadow that had been creeping in, the signs of distance, the moments where her eyes seemed elsewhere. Everything now fit together in a painful, confusing puzzle. Finally, Daniel spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "If we're going to move forward, I need to understand why it happened. The real reason, Emma?" He looked at her not with anger, but with a mixture of longing and fear, as if reaching for something fragile that could shatter with the wrong touch. Emma took a shaky breath and nodded. She knew this was the moment she had feared but also needed. She had to show him that her mistake didn't define her love, that her guilt was a sign of how deeply she cared, and that she wanted nothing more than to rebuild what they had lost. "I cheated because I was curious," she admitted, her voice soft but unwavering. "Not because I didn't love you, not because I wanted him. I was scared. I was scared that I wasn't enough for you, that you might notice something about me I couldn't see myself. I made a terrible choice because I didn't trust myself or us fully. I was trying to understand my own heart, and I failed. I hurt you, and I will regret that every day." She looked down, ashamed, but also relieved to finally speak the truth. Daniel felt a storm of emotions, hurt, love, anger, and longing crashing through him all at once. It was intense, confusing, and exhausting, but beneath it all, a thread of hope remained. He still loved her. He still remembered why he had chosen her every day before this mistake. And somehow that love, though battered, was enough to start facing the pain together. He reached for her hand, his fingers brushing hers lightly. "I don't know if I can forgive this right away," he admitted, his voice breaking slightly. "But I do know I still love you. And maybe that's a place to begin." Emma's tears fell freely now, not just from guilt, but from relief, from hope, from the fragile possibility of rebuilding what had been broken. The storm of their past was not gone, and the road ahead would be hard, but for the first time in months, there was a quiet spark between them. The past had arrived, the truth had been spoken, and the choice to heal not was now theirs to make together. Emma sat close to Daniel, her hands trembling but finally free from the weight of silence. The truth had been out, the past had spoken, and now the room was filled with a quiet, fragile tension. Daniel's eyes, still heavy with hurt, searched hers, trying to read the emotions she had carried alone for months. He needed to understand the why before he could even begin to think about healing. He had loved her for years, shared dreams with her, built routines with her, and yet one mistake had shaken the foundation of everything. Emma took a deep breath, steadying herself. She knew she owed him the full truth, even if it hurt, even if it pushed him away. "I cheated because I was curious," she said softly, her voice shaking. "Not because I didn't love you, not because I wanted him. I was scared that maybe I wasn't enough. Scared that you'd realize one day that you deserved someone better. I panicked. I made a terrible choice, and I hated myself the moment it happened." She looked down at her hands, her voice almost a whisper. Daniel didn't speak. He only listened, letting her words sink in, letting the weight of her confession reach him fully. Emma lifted her eyes to meet his, tears spilling freely now. "I'm not asking you to forgive me today," she continued. "I'm asking for a chance to rebuild, to prove that what I feel for you is real, deep, and worth fighting for. I love you, Daniel. I've always loved you. And even if I made a mistake, that love didn't change. It never will." Her honesty struck him in a way that anger, hurt, or betrayal could not. It was raw, unfiltered, and real. Daniel's chest felt tight. He wanted to yell, to ask why, to demand reasons. But he also remembered the woman he loved, the woman who had held him when he was broken, who had supported him without question, who had made his life brighter simply by being in it. The memory of their life together, the laughter, the quiet mornings, the small acts of care came flooding back. It made the anger softer, the hurt sharper, and the love more fragile but persistent. "I don't know if I can forgive this right away," he said finally, his voice low but steady. "It's not something I can just forget, but I also can't deny that I still love you, and maybe love. Maybe that's where we start." Emma felt a rush of relief and fear all at once. She reached for his hand, letting their fingers intertwine. The simple touch spoke volumes, more than words ever could. It was not perfection. It was not instant healing. But it was a beginning, fragile and trembling, yet full of possibility. They sat in silence for a while, the rain outside tapping against the windows like a quiet rhythm to their thoughts. Neither knew what the future held, how long it would take to rebuild trust, or whether their relationship would survive the shadow of that one mistake. But in that silence, there was understanding. Both knew that love wasn't about perfection. It was about honesty, about choosing each other even when it was hard, about facing fear and guilt together instead of letting them tear things apart. Emma whispered again, more softly this time, "I will do whatever it takes, Daniel. I will show you every day that I love you, that I regret this, and that I want us. I want us to be stronger, to face life together, even with the mistakes we've made." Daniel squeezed her hand, the smallest gesture of reassurance, and for a moment, the world outside seemed to disappear. The hurt was still there, but the love messy, complicated. Rhea was louder. He leaned back slightly, taking a deep breath. "We have a long road ahead," he said, "and it won't be easy. There will be days where we doubt, where the past feels too heavy, where it hurts to even look at each other. But if we can face that together, maybe we can get through anything." Key nodded, tears falling freely but mixed with hope. That hope was fragile, yes, but it was alive. And for the first time in months, she felt something she had almost forgotten, the possibility of healing, of love renewed, of a future they could still choose together. They held hands. Not in triumph, not in certainty, but in quiet promise. A promise that love could survive mistakes if it was honest, if it was patient, if it was willing to fight. And in that small, quiet room in Seattle, Emma and Daniel began the first step toward rebuilding, toward trusting again, toward loving again, with hearts open to the possibility that their imperfect love could become something stronger than either of them had ever imagined. The storm had passed, but the calm was not complete. It was only the beginning.